Magic and Mystery in Tibet by Alexandra David-Neel, Chapter 5, continued. If Naropa showed himself a mild spiritual father, such was not the case with Marpa, who tortured the poor Milarespa for years, commanding him to build a house unaided, and then ordering him several times to pull it down when it was nearly finished and rebuild it again. Milarespa was to dig out of the stones alone and to carry them on his back. The repeated rubbing of these hard loads caused sores which became infected on account of the earth and the dirt that entered them. Marpa pretended to ignore the martyrdom which his disciple endured, when at last, yielding to the supplications of his wife, Dagmidma, the Lama condescended to look at the bleeding back of Milarespa. He coldly advised him to place a piece of felt on it with holes to isolate the sores. This is a process commonly used in Tibet for the sore backs of pack animals. The house built by Milarespa still exists in Lobrag, Lhobrag, southern Tibet. Tibetans do not entertain the least doubt regarding the complete authenticity of such stories. If we cannot vie in faith with them, we must, however, beware of considering all traditional accounts of the novice Nagjolpa's exertions as mere fictions. It would be also an error to believe that such facts belong to a remote past and cannot occur again nowadays. The Tibetan mind has not changed since the time of Marpa. In the house of many lamas I have recognized the very picture of his home and customs as they are depicted in Tibetan literature, while Marpa himself appeared to me personified by the master of the house. The young monk, in quest of a spiritual guide, has also remained the image of his predecessors. If not quite equal in zeal to Naropa and Milarespa, who have been at all times exceptional characters, he is still ready to bear uncommon hardships, make a number of sacrifices, and see many prodigies. And so the fantastic adventures of yore are lived over again every day at the four corners of the land of snows. However barbarous the physical ordeals with which the hermits think useful to test the quality of their disciples may appear, these are nevertheless the lightest part of the training. The really dreadful trial is the purely mental one. This begins when the first idea arises in the candidate for initiation of begging the guidance of a mystic anchorite. So many things are rumored about these Gomchens. Their life is so mysterious, their appearance and rare words they utter are so exceedingly strange that for Tibetans already inclined to superstitious terror, they seem 1,000 times more to be feared than gods and demons. Indeed, they must be so, for they are credited with the power of enslaving gods and demons. Lost travelers or hunters have more than once related that while wandering across solitary hills, they have had a glimpse of non-human beings attending on some of these hermits. To betake oneself to such a master, to put one's present life and one's fate hereafter in his hands, is a hazardous step. It's easy to imagine the hesitations, the conflicting feelings, and the anguish which prey on the mind of the aspirant to secret lore. The long distances which the candidate generally has to travel through desert regions to reach the hermitage of the master whom he has chosen, the wild majesty of the site in which such hermitages are generally situated, all these again contribute to deeply impress the young monk. Psychic training undertaken in such a disposition, in such surroundings, and under such a master cannot help being fantastic. Around the disciple abandoned to prolonged solitary meditations, heaven and earth quake and whirl so that he can nowhere find a firm footing. Gods and demons mock him in visions, at first appalling and then ironical and disconcerting, when he has conquered fear. The maddening succession of impossible occurrences may continue 10 or 20 years. It may torture the disciple until his death, until one day he awakes from the nightmare, having understood that which was to be understood, and, bowing at the feet of his impassive master, takes leave of him without asking for any more teaching. Among several stories which I have heard from anchorites and Najalorpas regarding their initiation, the following is typically Tibetan. When he betook himself to a Lama Gomchen, Yeches, I'm going to say Yeches, Yeshes. Gyatso was not quite a novice in mystic training. He has spent several fairly long periods in strict seclusion, endeavoring to find an answer to a question which puzzled him painfully. What is the mind? He asked himself. And he tried to catch his mind in order to examine and analyze it. But the fugitive thing, as the water that a child endeavors to keep in its closed hand, always escaped. His guru, a lama from the monastery to which Yeshes belonged, seeing him tortured by his unsuccessful efforts, directed him to an anchorite whom he knew. The journey was not very long, only about 3 weeks, which is reckoned a short time in Tibet. But the track went across desert regions and passes 18,000 feet high. Yeshes started carrying on his back a few books, a blanket, and the usual provisions: roast barley flour, butter, and tea. It was in the 2nd month of the Tibetan year. And then there's a footnote which says, in March. The Tibetan New Year fell early in February. Deep snow covered the ground, and all along the way the traveler could behold those awe-inspiring frozen landscapes of the high summits which seemed to belong to another world. One evening at sunset he reached the Gomchen hermitage, a vast cave in front of which extended a small natural terrace that had been enclosed by a wall. Some distance below, a few huts sheltered those disciples who, for a short time, were allowed to stay near the Lama. The anchorites' dwellings stood on the upper heights of a mountain formed by blackish rocks, commanding a view of emerald green water over a small, rippleless lake. I arrived there once at dusk, as Yeshes has done many years before, and looking at the desolate scenery, lighted by the dim twilight, I could understand how strong an impression it had made on him. Yeshes asked one of the Lama's disciples to beg for him the permission to be admitted to his master. The Gomchen did not allow him to climb to his cave. This is habitual and did not astonish Yeshes, who had never expected to be received immediately. He shared the cell of a novice, and he waited. After a week had elapsed, he timidly ventured to have the hermit reminded of his request. The answer came at once. He was ordered to leave the place immediately and to return to his monastery. He cried out his despair to the eye of the teacher and prostrated himself at the foot of the rocky slope. But no compassionate answer broke the dead silence of the desert. Yechus had to go. The same evening, a hailstorm swept across a barren tableland which he had to cross. He distinctly saw giant, threatening phantoms, lost his way in the darkness, and was wandering about all night. The following days brought nothing but trouble. The weather remained awful. The traveler had exhausted his provisions. He was nearly drowned in crossing a mountain stream, and reached his Gompa at last, a victim of disease and despair. Yet the faith which he had intuitively put in the stern Gomchen remained unshaken. 3 months later, he started again. As during the previous journey, he met terrible storms on the high passes. The credulous Yechus did not fail to ascribe them to supernormal cause. Either he thought the Lama had let the winds loose to test his steadiness of purpose, or evil spirits had stirred them up to prevent him from reaching the Gomchen's hermitage and being initiated by him in the mystic doctrine. That second journey did not prove more useful than the first one. Yechus was not even allowed to bow at the feet of the hermit, but was sent back immediately. He made 2 more journeys to the anchorite during the next year, and the second time he was at last admitted before him. "You are mad, my son," the Gomchen told us. "Why are you so obstinate? I do not accept new disciples. I have also got some information about you. You have already pursued philosophic study and spent a long time in meditation. What do you hope for from an old, ignorant man? If you really wish to learn the secret, mystic lore, go to Lama N at Lhasa. He is conversant with all works of the more learned authors and is fully initiated in the esoteric traditions. Such a master is just what a well-read man like you needs." Yeshus knew that this way of speaking is usual with gurus. It is a way of testing the degree of confidence and esteem in which the candidate disciples hold them. Moreover, he was full of faith, so he remained obstinate, testified in various manners of his sincere devotion and earnestness, and was finally accepted by the Lama. And I'm going to pause here and continue chapter 5 next time. Till soon.